Within the opulent chambers of China's imperial palaces, where ivory screens depicted scenes of eternal happiness and precious gemstones adorned every surface, thousands of young women endured existences that redefined human suffering while maintaining facades of serene beauty. The Chinese imperial concubine system, spanning over 2 millennia across multiple dynasties, created what modern historians recognize as history's most elaborate and sustained program of psychological and physical torture, disguised as privilege and luxury. The Ming Dynasty records, recently translated from classical Chinese, revealed that Emperor Wanli maintained over 9,000 concubines during his 48-year reign, yet spoke to fewer than 200 throughout his entire life, leaving thousands of women to exist in a limbo more torturous than death itself. These women, selected from across the empire for their beauty, intelligence, and family connections, discovered that their perceived good fortune was actually a sentence to lives of constant terror, brutal competition, and systematic dehumanization that stripped away every aspect of their former identities. The selection ceremonies themselves were elaborate charades that masked what amounted to state-sanctioned human trafficking. Families competed to offer their daughters to imperial agents, believing they were securing prosperity and social advancement, while actually condemning their children to fates worse than slavery. The journey to the imperial capital often lasted months, during which suicide attempts became so common that transport officials developed restraint techniques disguised as ceremonial honors, including golden chains that prevented movement while appearing to celebrate the girl's elevated status. Upon arrival, these young women underwent transformation processes designed to erase their individual personalities and rebuild them as interchangeable objects designed solely for imperial pleasure and political manipulation. The psychological evaluation procedures, conducted by teams of eunuch psychologists, identified and systematically destroyed traits like independence, curiosity, and emotional attachment to family, replacing them with calculated submission, competitive instincts, and desperate dependence on imperial approval for basic survival needs. The daily existence of imperial concubines followed schedules that maximized psychological pressure while maintaining the illusion of pampered luxury that convinced outsiders these women lived enviable lives. Morning beauty rituals began at 3 o'clock and lasted until noon, involving cosmetic procedures that were simultaneously torture sessions. Faces were painted with lead-based makeup that caused gradual neurological damage. Hair was arranged with ornaments weighing up to 15 pounds that created chronic pain, and clothing was designed to restrict movement while showcasing the body for potential imperial inspection. The supervised meal period served carefully calculated portions, designed to maintain ideal weights according to imperial preferences that changed unpredictably, creating eating disorders that killed women slowly while preserving their outward appearance for as long as possible. Educational sessions occupied the afternoon hours with impossible memorization requirements that included thousands of pages of court etiquette, classical poetry celebrating their own subjugation, and detailed instruction in sexual techniques that reduced intimate human connection to mechanical performance designed solely for male satisfaction. The evaluation process transformed learning into psychological warfare, where women competed desperately for instructor approval while being required to report on their classmates' failures, mistakes, and signs of mental instability that might indicate future rebellion against the system. Evening brought the ultimate terror, potential imperial summons that represented both the greatest opportunity and the deadliest threat in any concubine's existence. Women selected for imperial attention faced encounters that could elevate their status overnight or result in immediate execution if they failed to satisfy desires they could never predict or understand. Those not chosen endured nights of anxiety-producing uncertainty, knowing that each passing day without imperial notice moved them closer to the outer quarters, where forgotten women slowly starved to death in silk-lined cells that maintained the appearance of luxury while providing none of its substance. The competitive atmosphere created by this system turned ordinary human emotions into weapons. Friendship became espionage, love transformed into betrayal, and maternal instinct evolved into calculated child sacrifice as women learned that protecting their own offspring often required eliminating the children of rivals. The survival strategies developed by imperial concubines revealed both human resilience and the devastating impact of systematic oppression on moral reasoning and emotional development. Women who managed to survive their first years in the palace often became the most vicious enforcers of its brutal hierarchy, understanding that showing mercy to newcomers would be interpreted as weakness that could cost them everything they had sacrificed to achieve. The intelligence networks operating within the harem employed every woman as both spy and potential target, creating an environment where reporting on rivals' activities became essential for maintaining even basic privileges like adequate food, clean clothing, and access to medical care when illness or injury threatened their ability to maintain imperial standards of beauty and deportment. The poisoning techniques developed within palace walls demonstrated sophistication that impressed even experienced assassins. Concubines learned to use everything from infected needles hidden in jewelry to toxic powders mixed into cosmetics, and even trained insects to deliver precisely calibrated venoms that could cause anything from temporary illness to prolonged death, depending on strategic requirements. Historical documents reveal that Consort Zhen, one of Emperor Guangxu's wives, survived over 20 assassination attempts and successfully eliminated 37 rivals through methods so subtle that modern forensic investigators still cannot determine the exact causes of their deaths. The pregnancy protocols created additional layers of horror. Women who successfully conceived faced immediate isolation from all human contact except medical monitors, dietary restrictions so severe that maternal mortality reached 50%, and constant surveillance designed to prevent any emotional bonding with their unborn children, who would be raised by teams of servants if they survived birth. If these revelations about how absolute power created systems of oppression that defied human imagination shock you as much as they should, explore the hidden connections between these historical atrocities and modern trafficking operations that continue exploiting vulnerable women across the globe today. The collapse of the imperial system in 1912 revealed the true scope of destruction wrought by centuries of treating human beings as expendable commodities in service of political power and male ego. When investigators gained access to previously sealed palace quarters, they discovered evidence suggesting that the imperial concubine system had claimed more lives than most wars, with mass graves containing thousands of women's remains buried. beneath gardens where emperors had once strolled while composing poetry about eternal love and heavenly mandate. The psychological damage extended beyond individual victims to influence Chinese cultural attitudes toward women, marriage, and power for generations, creating social patterns that normalized violence against females and legitimized treating them as objects whose value depended entirely on their ability to serve male interests. The final irony was that this system, designed to ensure dynastic continuation through controlled breeding and absolute male dominance, ultimately contributed to the Qing dynasty's downfall by producing emotionally damaged rulers raised by traumatized mothers who had learned that survival required abandoning every human virtue except cunning and ruthlessness. The last emperor, Puyi, raised by women who had survived the harem system, displayed psychological traits that made effective governance impossible and hastened the revolution that ended over 2,000 years of imperial rule in China.